Hello dear viewer, I apologize for this jump scare. I don't typically show my face, but it will feature a few more times throughout this video, so I thought it was only fitting that I record this intro in person. Plus, it saves me trouble recording B-roll. The video you're about to watch is a re-upload of one originally posted on May 10th of 2025. It was my first attempt at the review/retrospective format, and it was also my last attempt. I worked on it in my free time over the course of a few months and ultimately wasn't happy with the final result. I had to rewrite the script multiple times and re-record large chunks of the game, and several audio artifacts made it into the final voiceover as I rushed to get the project done. Because I wasn't proud of the end result and because it got no views, I ended up just taking it down. But after rewatching it, I was surprised to find that it wasn't as bad as I gave it credit for. I was actually impressed that I showcased the game as well as I did. I've been making videos since about 2012 when I got my hands on a shitty hand-me-down camcorder, just recording gameplay straight from the TV screen. And I like to think that my production skills have gotten better with each release since I was a kid. I've always used YouTube to share whatever I was most interested at any given time, and White Day was no exception. I really liked this game and wanted to talk about it. This video was an important step in my content creator journey, and since I'm not doing anything else right now, I thought it was only fair to give it back to you all while I start on my next project. So without further ado, I hope y'all enjoy the video.
White Day, a Labyrinth-named school, is a terrible title, but I'm sure it reads better in its native language of Korean. It's also a cult classic survival horror game from 2001, set in a school haunted by vengeful spirits and possessed faculty members. An English translation was planned for a 2004 release before the publisher also became a ghost. This didn't stop a remake from being released worldwide in 2015, making this video completely redundant. It should be noted that I am playing the White Day repackaged mod, which includes an updated fan translation, optional gameplay tweaks in the launcher, and a restored puzzle localization. You play as Lee Hee-min, the new transfer student at Yeondu High School, a place with a long history of deaths, accidental or otherwise, where the students are generally miserable and the teachers have an unrealistic amount of free time. Given the criminal negligence of the school staff, it's a wonder the place hasn't been shut down yet. You'd think people would start asking questions after the first few suicides. You wouldn't know any of this, however, if you only watched the opening cinematic, a scene ripped straight out of your typical slice-of-life romance anime. It begins with our main character attempting to introduce himself to a woman. Very brave. However, she is immediately put off by his awkward demeanor and leaves, foolishly leaving behind her belongings, which he pockets for safekeeping. He later returns to school on the night of March 13th, on the eve of White Day, hoping to return her diary and give her a little something else on the side. You enter at 10 p.m., just in time for the doors to lock behind you for the night, the only way out being conveniently on the other side of campus. A neat detail you might notice is that most of the clocks in school move in real time and will chime on the hour. This isn't important to us now, but on higher difficulties, you'll have to escape the school under the strict time limit of just 2 hours. After getting a grasp of our surroundings, we'll meet 2 more girls, rounding out our cast of supporting characters. We have the quiet, nerdy one, the popular one who everyone loves, and the bitchy one who will insult and harass us for most of the game just for being here. With introductions out of the way, we must attempt conversation. The dialogue options can vary, from being completely oblivious to being a quote, nice guy to being a dick for no reason, just like a real teenager. I'm not gonna lie, I genuinely appreciate how He-Man is written. Regardless of which lines you choose, there's always a degree of childlike naivete. At first, these choices might seem redundant, but they actually influence whether you get a character's good or bad ending. Pick enough of the correct options and your outcome will be more favorable. Either way, you'll still be disappointed regardless of which ending you get. Our conversation is cut short when our eardrums are blown out by an alarm which is so loud that there's even a fix for it in the launcher. The shutoff switch is in a locked classroom nearby, so we commit an act of vandalism by cutting open a vent cover in order to crawl through the air ducts. It's here that we witness a staff member inflicting corporal punishment on another poor soul who dared to enter the school at night, which the disembodied voices find really funny. With the threat and the supernatural established, we proceed into the workshop and shut off the alarm by randomly flicking levers until all the lights turn green and my ears stop bleeding. Our prize is a piece of wood engraved with a Chinese symbol for metal. These talismans will be our main progression blockers for the rest of the game, typically rewarded after boss fights and used to open up new wings of the school. There's 5 in total, 1 for each of the elements associated with feng shui. After Sung-Ah recovers from her tinnitus, she gives us the key to the nearby hallway, where we're properly introduced to our primary enemy for the rest of the game. Elderly men with varying amounts of hair. They may be slow, but they're armed with experience and, more importantly, a fucking bat. We can't fight back, so our only choice is to run, break line of sight, and hide. There's no lockers or wardrobes to take shelter in. Instead, the only thing standing between us and blunt force trauma is fitting our petite frame behind the small-ass furniture designed for school children. The janitor's AI is deceptively intelligent, and what originally drew me to the game. If they detect signs of trespassing in a room along their patrol route, they'll step in to investigate, look around a bit, and turn off the lights and close the door before they leave. The first time this happened to me, I heard him coming and quickly hid behind a desk, watching him from the shadows and praying he wouldn't step too far into the room. I was on the edge of my seat. In actuality, the janitor only has 3 states: patrolling, alerted, and chasing. His patrol is always the same. Learn it and you can go the whole game without being detected. Don't worry, you'll know when he's coming, as his keyring is omnipresent, unless he's on one of the other floors, which exist on separate planes of reality. Be careful around stairwells, as he'll always hear you before you hear him. There are 4 situations that will cause him to switch to his alerted state: seeing an open door, seeing a light on that should be off and vice versa, or hearing the player sprinting. The 4th concerns an NPC that I'll get to in a bit. What this means is that if you don't want to get caught, remember to close the doors behind you and get used to playing in the dark. Don't worry, the light sources are shit anyways. After witnessing some spooky shit, we run into So Young, the girl who we're supposed to be crushing on and whose diary we stole. She doesn't get to say much before she's swept into a nearby classroom by a tree using its veiny tentacles. This is our first boss fight. We have to solve some puzzle using a series of notes under pressure, and future bosses will follow this format. For now, there's no time limit, and as such, we cannot lose short of dying. So Young will remain in bondage as long as we desire. Instead, the driving force urging us to complete this puzzle as quickly as possible is the loud, deranged laughter of the tree ghost that will play on loop until we can dispense the herbicide. Unfortunately, you'll find that this is a trend. Each boss fight is accompanied by a blaring sound effect played on repeat, whether that be the same recycled laughter or the crying of a baby, as if the developers somehow correlated tension with neurosis. Fortunately for myself, I find the screams of infants to be far less grating on the ears than expressions of joy, but your mileage may vary. After killing the tree by spraying its sack with a chemical solvent, So Young disappears and we get something far more valuable. Another talisman. This one belonging to the wood element. And that's the general gameplay loop that we'll be following going forward. Explore a new area, read some documents, solve some puzzles, and face a boss before using its talisman to move on to the next. The puzzles themselves are pretty good and creative. Some are easier than others, but almost every one of them slowed me down at least a little bit, and I even had to look up a walkthrough for some of them. Now, whether that's because the solutions were too abstract or because I'm a moron is up for debate.
Oh, it's 1 hour. That's right. Wait, did I misread the other clocks? I'm stupid. I'm so stupid.
but seriously, look at these two symbols and tell me they're the same. This is genuinely the only part of the game in which the dated graphics negatively impacted my experience. If I had to choose one puzzle to be my favorite, it would have to be the piano puzzle in the music room. You have to dial the correct number on a nearby telephone to mimic the notes being played on said piano. It's simple, but it sticks out to me as being something a child might actually do to pass the time. The accompanying document even has a bunch of nursery rhymes, with the digits required to play them listed. You can't, sadly, as you're limited to only 4 numbers before the phone starts ringing. You aren't expected to know anything about piano either. If you're like me and not musically inclined, you can just sound out the notes through trial and error. On the other hand, the lowest point for the puzzles has to be towards the end of the game. After unlocking the door to the rooftop of the new building, you're met with a large pool of water. Attempting to wade through it will have you flung back to the start, causing you to take damage relative to the distance you were thrown. There's only a single safe path through the water, and it's only revealed by a key item that you aren't guaranteed to have by this point. If you miss the one note alluding to this like I did, your only recourse is to turn around and explore some of the rooms you haven't checked yet. The puzzle to get the item in question isn't hard, but it's a little too out of the way for my liking. It's a total pace breaker to realize you still don't have all the pieces after spending the whole chapter trying to get to this point. Puzzles aside, you'll be spending much of your playtime walking around, exploring the school, and this is where the game excels. At the beginning of each chapter, you'll be given a cutscene, giving you a vague direction to head in that will lead you to the next talisman, but it's up to you to figure out how to get there. I never found myself stuck for too long outside of puzzles. I almost always felt like I was given just the right amount of direction, knowing which areas were important to progression, while still being able to discover things on my own. Documents can be found scattered around, usually in hard-to-miss locations, stringing you along and hinting at puzzle solutions, with key information being highlighted in yellow so you don't have to waste your time reading flavor text if you don't want to. I only missed one of these on my first playthrough because it was just on the floor, in a room without working lights. All the while, the place is just dripping with atmosphere. From the creak of the floorboards, the scraping of the sliding doors, and the flickering fluorescent lights, you feel the history of the school with every step forward, contrasted by the cleaner, more sterile environments of the new building. The school just feels alive, more so because of all the spirits that inhabit it. Throughout your journey, you're bound to encounter at least one paranormal incident. It could be as inconspicuous as a moving painting, or as overt as all the stall doors in a bathroom opening and slamming shut on their own. I won't list all the ghosts you can run into, but there's enough that you'll find one or two on your own, and the remake added even more. All of these, however, are fairly tame compared to the haunted head ghost, one of 2 hostile spirits who isn't a boss. You can encounter her as early as when the janitor is introduced, but you're more likely to run into her for the first time in the second wing of the main building. In theory, she exists so that you don't stay in one place for too long. But in practice, she's a bitch and only exists to interrupt you during puzzles and slow the pace of the game down to a halt. She's nearly invisible, always knows where you are, and is constantly floating towards you through walls and across floors. Heaven forbid you stop to read about the lore because opening the inventory doesn't pause the game. If you allow her to touch you, she'll deal a small amount of damage and alert the janitor to your current location. Don't bother trying to hide, because he'll always know where you are and a chase is inevitable. Unless he gets stuck and despawns. I did have this clutch standoff with her when I was hiding in the nurse's office from the janitor when she showed up. I had to awkwardly loop her around the table for a minute or so, careful not to make any noise that might let him know I was in there. It almost felt like a scene in a horror movie, in which I had to keep my composure so as to not blow my cover. Fortunately, she only exists in the first half of the game, and I'll be honest, her presence is not missed.
Now, you might be wondering, why are we collecting these oversized hockey pucks? What do they do? And where did they come from? As it turns out, the school was built on an ancient Indian burial ground, and the staff enlisted the help of a wizard, who happens to be the music teacher, to create a barrier to contain the bad vibes. As a consequence, anyone who died on school grounds became trapped here, unable to pass on to the afterlife. Now, the spirits have become so powerful and the negative energy so plentiful that the barrier is on the verge of failure, so we're right back to where we started. The barrier hasn't so much as solved the issue, they've just swept it under the rug, and now the hump is beginning to be a tripping hazard. But that's just the lore. The real story is a tale as old as time, one about loss. One night, a fire broke out in the home ec room, where a young girl waiting for her mother to pick her up was killed for having weak lungs, while her best friend left her to die. The young girl's mother, grieving, begged the music teacher to bring her back to life. However, this would require a sacrifice, and who better than the one who let her die? The ritual would have gone off without a hitch.
had the sacrifice not managed to hang herself. With their efforts seemingly in vain, the mother went mad and the music teacher killed himself out of guilt. Little did they know, the ritual was actually a success. Kinda. The girl was resurrected, partially, and now needs a second sacrifice to complete her revival. How the game goes about telling this story is schizophrenic. You see, there are two story routes to choose from, and you're expected to play both to get the full picture, but neither truly stand on their own. One is better than the other, but the choice that determines which route you end up on is entirely arbitrary and isn't telegraphed to the player whatsoever. Scenes in one route either won't happen in the other, or are altered to suit whichever characters you're accompanied by. You'll find that characters who appear quite often in one route just don't exist in the other, being completely absent without any explanation. In one, a character isn't even introduced until her boss fight, even though her scenes that were cut were quite effective, and as a result, her reveal has little to no impact. Shortly after our first boss fight at the beginning of the game, we meet Sung-ah in the broadcasting room. After a short conversation, she runs out of the room screaming, after hearing cries coming from the recording booth, and we're given a choice. The most important choice in the entire game, which will dramatically alter the course of the story. Do you A. follow Sung-ah out of the room to relative safety, or B. investigate what is most likely a life-threatening ghost? If you picked option A, congratulations, you just locked yourself out of the good ending, as well as the true final boss fight. If you went down the Sung-ah path like I did, you won't have a clue as to what's going on, or why this homeless woman has superpowers. At the end of the game, after an anticlimactic final boss, Sung-ah simply called me a dumbass, and the credits rolled. And yes, all three of the other endings on this route are just as unsatisfactory and lacking in closure. Needless to say, I was rather underwhelmed. It was only on my second playthrough that I realized I got played. Aside from a single document mentioning the accident, it's only during the true final boss fight that we're told what happened on the night of the fire, what Sung-ah really is, and given context for the rest of the game. Even then, you probably won't be able to hear any of it while you're frantically running through a maze trying to dismantle the barrier, and there's a chance the fight will end before the voice lines do. The fight itself is actually the simplest and most visually interesting in the whole game. Just head to the seal flashing on the map and collect them all to finally put the spirits to rest for good. It can be kinda hard to find your way through the maze as the walls are blinding, so be sure to bring some extra Lunchables and maybe a Starbucks triple shot in case you get turned around. With the Master of the Labyrinth defeated, all that's left is to leave Sung-ah and So-young behind and make our way back to the world of the living, where we can emotionally manipulate and gaslight best girl Ji-hyun into liking us using our shared trauma. Or alternatively, you can bring So-young back with you and still fail to get the true ending because you chose the wrong dialogue option in your first conversation at the beginning of the game. And that's White Day, a game I would highly recommend. Just know that the novelty of the human enemies will wear off early, and that you might need to use the wiki to fill in the gaps in the story. What you're left with then is a game with a lot of atmosphere, a game that was made with a lot of love. I feel we don't see too many low-budget horror games like this anymore, where the ambition exceeded what the developers were capable of. I feel a lot of indie games today blend together, generally being smaller, more focused short stories about some monster in the woods or a slasher in a derelict building. Even the weirder, more creative ones leave me wanting more. But not White Day. It wants to tell a story about possessed janitors, a murderous grieving mother, and a doomsday scenario in which evil spirits fed by negative emotions come flooding into our world, while still making time for romance. And it does it all with such a straight face that I have to admire it. It's buggy, amateurish, and arguably poorly written, but it makes up for it by getting me immersed unlike any horror game I've played in recent memory. It makes me wish we got more horror games set in schools, because honestly, there are few places in which I'd feel more vulnerable. So go play it. It's only about 6 hours long and basically abandonware, so what do you have to lose? And consider buying the remake on Steam. I haven't played it myself, but can easily see myself doing so in the future. It added more ghosts, a new story mode, and fixed several of my grievances with the original. $30 is a bit much for a game this short, so wait for it to go on sale. That's all for now, but the next video should hopefully be on a game a bit older and a bit weirder than this one. That being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Hello everyone, thank you all so much for watching the first ever video on this channel. It's strange to finally say that. I started making this video in late January and have been working on it a couple hours a week in my free time.
I've never undertaken a creative project like this before, so it's been something of a journey of self-discovery. I'm writing this shortly after editing, and I have a lot on my mind, but I'll try to keep this brief. The final video has a lot of issues, particularly in the writing and audio. I wasn't sure how to end the video, so I sort of half-assed the conclusion, and a couple audio glitches made it into the final voiceover, which you almost definitely noticed, those beeps and buzzes. That being said, I'm happy with the final result, and would much rather take what I've learned and start on the next project, which hopefully won't take 3.5 months. Most content creators don't take a quarter of a year to churn out a half-assed 20-minute review. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with a friend. It would be the ultimate motivation to keep on making these and improving. If you want to support me in another way, you can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/treepig, where my original playthrough for this video was streamed. You can come in and give me any feedback in real time, or just talk about the game some more. I stream every day but Wednesday from 7:30 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, and I'll be doing a Hell Mode playthrough the Monday after this video is released to celebrate. You can find the VODs to both on my second channel, Treepig Live. The following Monday, I will also be streaming the next game I want to make a video about, if you're interested in getting a sneak peek at that. That's all I wanted to say. I hope you have a great day.
The